Hey, old lady, stand still! A black woman in her mid-50s, who had been studying the label on a spice jar, turned around, startled. She was dressed in a very casual outfit, slightly worn jeans, a plain gray-blue t-shirt, and a thin blouse, which did not fit in with the neat shopping atmosphere of many around her. Her shopping cart contained only a few essentials: a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, a few cans of tuna. Opposite her was a young female police officer, about 30 years old, her blonde hair tied back neatly at the nape of her neck, her figure strong in uniform. The name tag on her chest clearly stated, B. Hastings. Officer Brenda Hastings did not look like she was on patrol, but rather had just stopped by the supermarket for personal business. Her face was tense, her sharp eyes looking at the black woman with suspicion and annoyance. "You mean me, officer?" the black woman asked again, her voice low and slightly hoarse, a little surprised but not afraid. "Who else would come here?" Hastings replied, his voice haughty. She stepped forward quickly, closing the distance, her eyes scanning the woman from head to toe, stopping meaningfully on her plain clothes. "What are you doing here, looking around like that? Are you trying to steal something? People like you go into supermarkets to steal things." The blatant racist slur made the black woman frown. An angry blush appeared on her dark cheeks. "Officer, I'm just shopping like everyone else. Please be careful with your language and be respectful of others." The woman's calm and direct request seemed to be a challenge to Hastings. The young policewoman felt belittled, dared to lecture by someone she considered inferior. Her face was red with anger and pride. "Careful? Respectful? You dare lecture me?" Hastings roared, her anger making her lose her mind. And then, in an act of unimaginable recklessness and stupidity, she suddenly pulled a Glock 19 from the holster on her hip. Clack! The dry, cold click of a gun being cocked echoed through the din of the supermarket, a deadly, discordant note. Hastings aimed the black muzzle of the gun straight at the black woman's chest. "Hands up! Lean on that shelf, now, or I'll shoot!" Several shoppers nearby screamed in horror. A loud crash was heard as someone dropped something. People quickly backed away, creating a clearing around the two women and the policewoman. Some people shakily raised their phones and began recording the terrifying scene. The black woman froze for a moment, not with fear, but with shock at the officer's insane and completely unfounded actions. She looked straight into the muzzle of the gun pointed at her, then up into Hastings's eyes, which were blazing with rage. There was no panic in them, only cold seriousness and a deep disappointment. Slowly, very slowly, she raised her hands to shoulder height, palms open. She did not lean against the shelf as Hastings had ordered, but remained upright, steady in the middle of the aisle. Her eyes never left Hastings, a sharp, analytical gaze, as if she were assessing a potential threat rather than a terrified victim. The air in aisle 7 was thick. All sound seemed to have died away, save for Hastings's labored breathing and the tense, suffocating silence. Who was that plainly dressed black woman? Why had the policewoman taken such extreme action? And what would happen next in this life-or-death situation? Just minutes earlier, Officer Brenda Hastings had been in a foul mood. Her afternoon shift had just ended, and she had stopped by the Oak Valley Foods supermarket on her way home to pick up some dinner. Hastings was a young cop, only 5 years into her career, but she had already developed a reputation within the Oak Valley Police Department for her arrogance and especially her strong prejudices. She had grown up in a white, middle-class suburban family and had always had a condescending view of those she considered different or less fortunate, especially people of color and those from the working class. She believed she had power, and she liked to flaunt it, sometimes to the point of overreaching. As Hastings pushed his small cart down the aisles, his eyes fell on a black woman browsing in the spice section. Immediately, Hastings's prejudiced brain kicked into gear. Old cheap clothes, black skin, standing around too long. To Hastings, these were all signs of a suspicious person, someone who didn't belong, a potential shoplifter. She didn't care what the woman was actually thinking or doing. Maybe she was comparing prices carefully, reading the nutrition facts, or simply looking for a particular spice. In Hastings's eyes, she was a potential threat to the order of the store. Without thinking much, nor consulting the supermarket security staff or the manager, Hastings decided to act herself. She walked straight up to the woman and began her arrogant interrogation. "Where are my papers?" Hastings asked blankly, his voice commanding. The black woman, Evelyn Reed, turned back, frowning slightly at the rudeness. "I'm going to the local supermarket. I don't have my papers, officer." "No papers?" Hastings sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Do you have money to pay for the stuff in the cart, or are you just going to bag it and run?" She glanced at Evelyn's cart, which contained only a few cheap items, her expression growing more contemptuous. Evelyn felt the blood rush to her face, but she tried to keep her composure. Years of service had trained her to control her emotions in stressful situations. "I have enough money to pay for these items, officer. I am not a thief." "Who knows?" Hastings still did not let go, his voice growing more and more annoyed. "I suspect you by the way you look. Why don't you stay in your slum? Why come here and make a mess of other people's eyes?" The vitriolic racial slurs and blatant insults were too much for Evelyn to bear. She could no longer remain silent. "Officer," she said, her voice low but clear and sharp, "you are harassing me without cause. Your current behavior and words are completely inappropriate, unprofessional, and in serious violation of the code of conduct expected of a law enforcement officer. You are discriminating against me simply because of my appearance and the color of my skin." It was this resistance, this calm pointing out of her wrongdoing by someone Hastings despised, that struck a nerve with the young policewoman's pride and arrogance. She felt challenged, humiliated by the people around her who were beginning to take notice. Anger flared uncontrollably. "You dare say I discriminate?" Hastings shouted, his face red. "You dare oppose a police officer in the execution of his duty?" In a fit of blind rage and a desire to show his power and crush Evelyn's resistance, Hastings resorted to the most insane act, drawing his gun. "I suspect you have a weapon on you. You want to fight me?" She shouted baseless accusations to justify her actions. "Put your hands up, or I'll shoot." Hastings' screams and the sight of the gun pointed at the black woman caused a wave of panic in the supermarket. Customers screamed and pushed each other to get away. There was a loud crash of goods. The supermarket manager, Mark Jenkins, a middle-aged man who seemed gentle and timid, saw the dangerous situation and tried to intervene. He raised his hands and slowly approached. "Officer, please calm down. What's going on? Please put your gun down. There are a lot of people here." "Get out of the way," Hastings shouted, waving the gun at Mr. Jenkins so menacingly that he jumped back. "This is police business. If you have nothing to do, get out." Evelyn Reed, the direct target of the gunfire, was the calmest. Her experience in real-life and death situations in military missions had helped her keep a cool head. She realized that Hastings was not only angry, but also frightened and out of control. Her actions were a combination of prejudice, ignorance, and a sudden outburst of anger. It was a dangerous situation, but not one without a solution. She slowly raised her hands to shoulder level as requested, but her eyes never left Hastings. She was assessing the distance, Hastings' stance, the way she held her gun, and the reactions of the people around her. She knew she had to do something to de-escalate the situation before someone got hurt because of this policewoman's madness. But she also knew that any action at this point would have to be extremely careful. The air in aisle 7 of the Oak Valley Foods supermarket was thick with tension. The frightened murmurs of the crowd, the whimpering of a child, and the gasps of Officer Brenda Hastings created a cacophony of chaos and fear. Hastings kept her Glock aimed at Evelyn Reed, her finger hovering over the trigger, her eyes glaring at the motionless black woman standing before her. Evelyn Reed, her arms still raised to her shoulders, looked Hastings straight in the eye. She decided the time had come to act, but not with force, but with her hidden wisdom and authority. "Officer Hastings?" Evelyn said, her voice clear, cutting through the tense silence. She had quickly read the name tag on the officer's chest. "What is your badge number?" Evelyn's sudden question and calm tone made Hastings pause slightly. What are you asking for?" "I need your badge number," Evelyn repeated, her voice firm. "Your actions right now are extremely dangerous, a serious breach of protocol and putting the lives of many at risk. You need to put your weapon down immediately." Hastings sneered, trying to regain his composure. "You have no right to order me around. You're just a petty thief." "I didn't steal," Evelyn said, her voice cold. "And I have every right to demand that you behave yourself. Now I need to make a phone call." "Call?" Hastings laughed again, a sycophantic, nervous laugh. She glanced at the phones pointed at her from the crowd. "Calling your friends to come and break out the prison?" "No," Evelyn replied curtly. "I need to call Sheriff Frank Davies." The words were like a bombshell that stunned Hastings. "The sheriff?" "Frank Davies." She looked at Evelyn as if she were crazy. "You're lying. Who do you think the sheriff is that you're calling? Does he care about people like you?" Evelyn was unfazed by the sarcasm. She lowered her voice slightly, but enough for only Hastings to hear, a voice that carried the weight of undeniable truth. "Officer Hastings, I'm not lying. Frank Davies and I are old friends. Very close. I've known him since we were kids. I have his personal phone number. Now your choices are, let me take the phone out of my coat pocket and call him, or you keep pointing the gun at me and prepare to face the wrath of the chief of police when he finds out exactly what happened here to his friend." The absolute confidence in Evelyn's voice, the familiar mention of the chief's name, and the assertion that there was a personal number had stunned Hastings. Frank Davies was known for his integrity, his sternness, but also his deep sense of loyalty. He spoke with pride of his old army buddies. Could this plainly dressed black woman really be one of them? Her unnatural calm, her fearless eyes, the way she spoke. A vague, cold fear began to creep into Hastings' mind. You dare lie to me?" Hastings stammered, but her voice had lost all its aggression. The gun in her hand began to tremble more visibly. "You can see for yourself," Evelyn replied, her voice defiant. "My cell phone is in my left jacket pocket. It's not a weapon." Hastings stood there, hesitating. Part of her wanted to believe this was all a great trick, but the other part told her the woman wasn't lying. Curiosity and the fear of the sheriff's punishment if it was true won out. She jerked her chin, motioned with her eyes. "Take it out. Slowly. Don't be naughty." Evelyn moved very slowly, using her left hand to slowly lower and reach into the pocket of her thin coat. She pulled out a rather old-looking cell phone, not a modern smartphone. She held it between her fingertips, holding it up for Hastings to see clearly. Then she used her thumb to swipe across the screen, finding a contact saved under the simple name, Frank D. She pressed the call button. The ringing rang in the silence. Once, twice. "Hello, Davies speaking." The deep, familiar voice of Chief Frank Davies came through the phone's speaker. Hastings's heart stopped. She held her breath, staring at Evelyn. Evelyn held the phone to her ear, but kept it on speaker loud enough for Hastings to hear. Her voice changed instantly, no longer that of a frightened civilian, but that of authority, clear and solemn. "Frank, this is Evelyn Reed." Those 3 words struck Hastings like a thunderbolt. Evelyn Reed. Colonel Evelyn Reed. She really was Colonel Evelyn Reed, the military hero of Oak Valley, the first black woman from that city to reach the rank of colonel in the United States Army, the one whom Sheriff Davies always spoke of with great admiration at formal ceremonies. the close friend he considered a sister, the one she had just called a snatch, the one she had just insulted for her shabby clothes, the one she was pointing a gun at because of her stupid prejudice. Hastings felt dizzy. Her limbs went weak. Cold sweat broke out on the back of her neck. Evelyn continued speaking into the phone, her voice calm but urgent. "Frank, I'm in Oak Valley Foods, aisle 7. Right now I have an officer of yours, Brenda Hastings. Badge number?" She glanced at Hastings's name tag again. "OV215, pointing a gun at me. Things don't look good. Can you come here right away?" She listened silently for a moment. There must have been a commotion on the other end of the line. Then she said, "Okay, Frank. Hurry up. I'll wait." She ended the call, putting the phone down slowly, her eyes never leaving Hastings. Brenda Hastings stood there, frozen. Her face was white, her lips trembling, unable to speak. The gun in her hand now felt like lead. She stammered, almost pleading. Colonel Reed? My God, no. It can't be you." "Lower your gun at once, Officer Hastings." This time, Evelyn's voice was no longer a request, but a stern command, carrying the authority of a senior officer accustomed to commanding thousands of soldiers. Hastings jumped. She was so panicked that she almost dropped the gun as she tried to lower it and put the safety on. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. She stammered, her voice full of despair. "Colonel, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know you. I just thought... Oh God, please forgive me. Please don't say anything to the chief. I beg you." Evelyn did not respond to the desperate plea. She simply stood there, silently watching the young policewoman collapse before her. There was no joy in her eyes, only exhaustion and a deep sadness at the stupidity and prejudice that had almost caused the tragedy. In the crowd, the murmurs of surprise turned to outrage as they realized the woman's true identity and what Hastings had done. "Oh my God, it's Colonel Reed! How dare that policewoman do that? Zrania. Neverayatna! Zrania. She must be punished." Less than 5 minutes later, sirens blared in front of the supermarket. Police Chief Frank Davies, dressed in his home clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, his face red with anger and anxiety, rushed into the supermarket like a whirlwind, followed by 2 other police officers. He saw Evelyn standing there, safe, and then his eyes flashed as he looked at Brenda Hastings, who was shaking like a leaf. "Hastings!" Sheriff Davies roared, his voice rising above the din of the supermarket. "What the hell did you do?" The curtain has fallen on the power play. The roles have been reversed. The hunter has become the prey, and justice is on its way. Police Chief Frank Davies's rage filled the aisle of number 7. He took long, determined strides toward Brenda Hastings, who stood trembling, her face drained of color. He didn't need to ask any more questions. The chaos, the angry stares of the people, the videos rolling in, and most importantly, the presence of Colonel Evelyn Reed, looking stern, but clearly having just escaped a very dangerous situation, it was all too much. "Turn in your weapon and badge immediately, Hastings," Chief Davies ordered, his voice cold and unforgiving. "You are hereby suspended indefinitely on the spot." Hastings sobbed, his hands shaking as he unbuckled his gun and removed the Oak Valley police badge from his shirt. "Sir, I'm sorry. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to." "A misunderstanding?" Davies interrupted, his voice filled with contempt and anger. "You call pointing a gun at an innocent citizen in the middle of a crowded supermarket a misunderstanding? You call insulting and disparaging Colonel Reed, a hero to this city, a misunderstanding?" He turned to the 2 officers accompanying him, who were also wearing serious expressions. "Sergeant Miller, Corporal Jones, take Miss Hastings to the station immediately. Take her straight to the Internal Affairs interrogation room. Seal her weapon and badge. Do not allow her to have any contact with anyone until further notice." "Yes, sir." the two officers replied curtly, advancing to escort the weeping Hastings out of the supermarket, past the unfriendly eyes of the crowd. Hastings' once proud career had gone up in smoke because of a moment of foolishness clouded by prejudice and arrogance. When Hastings had been taken away, Chief Davies turned back to Evelyn, his expression noticeably softer, but still filled with worry and guilt. "Evelyn," he said her name affectionately, "are you really all right? Do you need a medical checkup?" Evelyn shook her head, giving her longtime friend a small, reassuring smile. "I'm fine, Frank. Just a little surprised and disappointed by that officer's actions." "I don't know what to say, Evelyn. I apologize to you on behalf of the entire Oak Valley Police Department," Davies said, his voice full of remorse. "This was unacceptable. It should never have happened. We put you through this." He signaled for the other officers to begin their duties, interview witnesses, especially store manager Mark Jenkins, who had tried to intervene, and collect video footage from bystanders. That same evening, the Oak Valley Police Department's Internal Affairs Investigation Division, IAD, began investigating Officer Brenda Hastings's case with the utmost urgency and seriousness. The department's reputation was at stake, and the pressure from the public and the chief of police was intense. Colonel Evelyn Reed's official testimony was central to the investigation. With the calmness and precision of a military officer, she recounted the entire incident, from the racist slurs to Hastings's unprovoked and dangerous act of drawing his gun. Her testimony was supported by a series of consistent testimonies from witnesses at the scene, including the store manager. More importantly, cell phone videos captured by residents clearly captured Hastings's arrogant demeanor, her abusive language, and the horrifying moment she pointed a gun at Evelyn. These videos quickly went viral on social media, causing a wave of outrage in the community, adding to the pressure on the police department to handle the case seriously. Hastings' body cam was also extracted and analyzed. While the audio recording is unclear, the sight of a gun being pointed at an unarmed civilian in a crowded environment is indisputable evidence of a serious violation of the use of force policy. Brenda Hastings's personnel file was also thoroughly reviewed. It was discovered that she had received several written reprimands for unprofessional behavior toward members of the public and several informal complaints about biased comments. But the previous incidents had not been serious enough to warrant more serious disciplinary action. It was clear that the police department had been lenient or had ignored early warning signs. The IAD investigation was swift, and the conclusion was clear. Officer Brenda Hastings engaged in a serious abuse of authority, a flagrant violation of professional ethics and conduct, a clear display of racial discrimination, and a completely unnecessary and reckless use of deadly force, gun threats, that endangered public safety. The conclusion recommended the highest form of discipline, permanent dismissal from the police force, and the entire case file be referred to the Oak Valley District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Police Chief Frank Davies, without hesitation, signed the decision to fire Brenda Hastings immediately upon receiving the IAD report. He also personally met and discussed with the district attorney, pledging to cooperate fully to bring the case to light and ensure that justice is served. The Oak Valley County District Attorney's Office, after a thorough review of the investigative file, video evidence, and witness testimony, has determined that there is sufficient evidence to pursue criminal charges against Brenda Hastings. The formal charges filed include 1. Second-degree assault with a deadly weapon, based on intentionally pointing a loaded firearm at Colonel Reed, causing a reasonable fear of serious bodily injury. 2. Reckless endangerment. Hastings' actions created a risk of serious injury or death to people present at the supermarket. 3. Misconduct in public service. Taking advantage of assigned position and power to commit illegal acts and violate professional ethics. The racial element, although difficult to constitute a separate offense in this case under state law, was determined to be the primary motive for the offense, and would be an important aggravating factor during the trial and sentencing process. Brenda Hastings's trial took place a few months later in Oak Valley County Court and attracted considerable media and local attention. The image of a young police officer being put on trial for her racist and abusive behavior toward a respected female Army colonel sparked heated debate. In court, Colonel Evelyn Reed once again appeared as the prosecution's star witness. She wore her full Army uniform, but this time without her medals, to avoid undue influence on the jury. She recounted the events calmly, concisely, and in full detail. She did not exaggerate or show hostility toward Hastings, but simply stated the objective facts. Her calmness, authority, and consistent testimony earned the jury and Judge Chen, an Asian-American judge known for his impartiality and rigor. Prosecutor Miller presented a strong case, backed by irrefutable evidence. Video footage from witnesses was played repeatedly, clearly showing Hastings' aggressive behavior, profanity, and dangerous pointing of the gun. Testimony from the store manager and other customers confirmed Colonel Reed's version of events. The IAD's investigation and expert analysis of police use of force further supported the case. The prosecutor emphasized the abuse of public trust, the danger posed by Hastings, and especially the deplorable racial motives behind her actions. Brenda Hastings' defense attorneys had a difficult time. They tried to portray Hastings as a young officer under pressure, acting under extreme stress and misleading the situation. They argued that she felt threatened by Colonel Reed's uncooperative behavior, a weak and unsubstantiated argument. They also tried to elicit sympathy by referring to Hastings' personal circumstances, e.g., being a single mother, having financial difficulties, etc. Hastings also appeared extremely remorseful and cried throughout the trial. But these defense efforts were dwarfed by the weight of the evidence. The videos were indisputable. The testimony of numerous witnesses was consistent, and Colonel Reed's credibility was beyond question. After a few days of deliberation, the jury retired to deliberate. It didn't take them long to reach a verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, the jury foreman read the verdict aloud. Brenda Hastings was found guilty of assault in the second degree with a deadly weapon and official misconduct. She was also found guilty of reckless endangerment. When the day of the verdict arrived, the atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy. Brenda Hastings stood before the judge's podium, shaking and sobbing. Her family, sitting in the back row, could not hold back their tears either. Judge Chen looked at the defendant, then down at the case file. He began to read the verdict, his voice solemn and clear. He noted the defendant's remorse, her lack of serious previous convictions, and the personal difficulties presented by her defense attorney. But he also emphasized the extreme seriousness of the case. "Brenda Hastings," Judge Chen said, "you were entrusted with the power and responsibility to protect the people, but you betrayed that trust. You let your personal prejudice and blind rage dictate your actions. You turned a deadly weapon on an innocent citizen, a respectable woman, simply because of the color of her skin and her appearance. That action not only endangered human life, but also severely eroded the foundation of a just and equitable society." He paused, looking straight at Hastings. "As a police officer, you should be upholding the law and protecting the rights of all citizens. But you have done the opposite. Your behavior is intolerable and must be punished appropriately to set an example. After considering all the aggravating and mitigating circumstances, taking into account the impact of the conduct on the victim and the community, as well as the defendant's potential for rehabilitation, the court sentences Brenda Hastings to 2 years imprisonment. A 2-year prison sentence was imposed. To many, it may not seem like a heavy sentence for such a serious offense, but it is still a real prison sentence, a clear and appropriate punishment for a former police officer who abused his power. It demonstrates the seriousness of the law and also reflects the court's consideration of the specific factors of the case and the defendant. Brenda Hastings nearly collapsed when she heard the verdict. Her sobs grew louder. The bailiffs approached, handcuffed her, and led her out of the courtroom to begin serving her sentence. Justice, though not as perfect as anyone had hoped, had finally been served. The 2-year prison sentence handed down to former officer Brenda Hastings has sent shockwaves through the community and especially within the Oak Valley Police Department. It sends a clear message: abuse of power, racism, and indiscriminate use of force will not be tolerated, even when the offender is in uniform. The incident became a painful but necessary lesson. Chief Constable Frank Davies, determined to clean up the force and regain the public's trust, implemented a series of drastic reforms. Mandatory training on anti-bias, cultural sensitivity, anger management, and de-escalation skills was conducted more frequently and more rigorously. Recruitment processes were reviewed to more thoroughly screen applicants for signs of prejudice or violent tendencies. Body cam policies were strictly enforced, and monitoring and disciplinary action for misconduct were more aggressive, without leniency or cover-ups. In a meeting with the community, Chief Davies once again publicly apologized to the people and especially Colonel Evelyn Reed. He pledged to do everything in his power to build a police force that is professional, fair, and truly serves the interests of all people, regardless of skin color or social status. As for Colonel Evelyn Reed, she took the outcome of the trial with equanimity. She did not gloat over Hastings' punishment, but she believed that justice had been served to the extent necessary. After the incident was over, she continued her life in Oak Valley. She did not let the unfortunate incident overshadow her days. She can still be found participating in veteran community activities, meeting friends, and occasionally having coffee with Chief Davies at a regular coffee shop. Their long-standing friendship has not been affected by the incident. On the contrary, it has been strengthened by their shared goal of fighting for justice and fairness. Colonel Reed declined most interviews or television appearances. She did not want to be the center of attention. However, the story of her calm, courage, and wise handling of the situation quietly spread, earning her even more respect and admiration from the local people. She became a living symbol of dignity, resilience, and inner strength in the face of injustice. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.